The massive prison ship moved through dark space like a metal monster hunting for prey. The ship was called Void Reaper, and it belonged to the Galactic Coalition. The ship was huge, bigger than 10 city blocks put together. Its black metal walls were covered in strange alien symbols that glowed with purple light. Inside the ship, Commander Vextara walked down a long hallway. His footsteps made loud clicking sounds on the metal floor. He was not happy at all. His reptilian face showed anger, and his green scales were turning red, which meant he was very upset. His yellow eyes glowed with frustration as he moved toward the interrogation room. Commander Vextara was 7 feet tall and looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. His thick arms ended in sharp claws that could cut through steel. His tail dragged behind him, making scraping sounds on the floor. He wore a black uniform with silver badges that showed his high rank in the Coalition military for 3 whole days and nights. The commander had been trying to get information from a strange prisoner. The prisoner was from a species nobody had ever seen before. They called themselves humans and came from a planet named Earth. The Coalition had captured this human. When his small ship attacked one of their cargo vessels, the human ship had been impossible to understand. It moved in ways that broke all the rules of space combat. It appeared from nowhere, destroyed 2 Coalition warships, and disappeared again. Before anyone could react, when they finally caught the human pilot, everyone expected him to be easy to break. All prisoners talked eventually when faced with Coalition torture methods. But this human was different. Very different. Commander Vextara reached the interrogation room and pressed his clawed hand against the door scanner. The heavy metal door slid open with a hissing sound. Inside, the room was dark except for a bright light shining down on a chair in the center. The chair was made of pure energy that held the prisoner in place like invisible chains. The human sat in the energy chair and looked straight ahead. His name was Lee Minho, and he was unlike any creature the aliens had ever captured. He was only 6 feet tall, which was small compared to most Coalition species. His skin was pale pink, and he had dark hair that only grew on the top of his head. The strangest thing about him were his blue eyes that seemed to look right through anyone who stared at them. Lee Minho wore a torn flight suit that was once blue, but now had brown stains from dried blood. His face had cuts and bruises from 3 days of interrogation, but he showed no signs of breaking. His hands were tied behind his back with energy bonds that would shock him if he tried to move. The bonds had shocked him many times, but he never cried out in pain standing. Next to the prisoner was Interrogator Zelmuth, the most feared torturer in the Coalition fleet. Zelmuth looked like a giant octopus with gray skin and 8 long tentacles. Each tentacle had small devices at the end that could deliver electric shocks or inject painful chemicals into a prisoner's body. His large black eyes never blinked as he stared at his victim. Zelmuth had broken thousands of prisoners from dozens of different species. He knew exactly how much pain each type of alien could handle before they would tell him everything he wanted to know. But this human was a complete mystery. The creature seemed to feel pain normally, but somehow ignored it completely. Commander Vextara walked into the room, and his scales turned even redder with anger. He had been in charge of interrogations for 20 years and had never failed to get information from a prisoner. His reputation in the Coalition military depended on his success, but this one small human was making him look foolish. The commander stopped in front of Lee Minho and stared down at him with his glowing yellow eyes. The human looked back without any fear in his blue eyes. This made the commander even more angry. Most prisoners would be crying and begging for mercy by now, but this human acted like he was sitting in a comfortable chair at home. Speak, demanded Commander Vextara in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. Tell us your military codes. Tell us how your ships move so fast. Tell us where your home planet keeps its weapons. Lee Minho said nothing. He continued to stare straight ahead as if the commander was not even there. His breathing was calm and steady, even though the energy chair was designed to cause constant discomfort. The silence in the room was so complete that everyone could hear the humming sound of the ship engines far below. Interrogator Zelmuth moved closer to the prisoner and raised one of his tentacles. The device at the end began to glow with white-hot energy. This device had made the strongest warriors scream in agony, but the human did not even look at it. Zelmuth pressed the device against the human's arm and activated. The smell of burning skin filled the air, and smoke rose from where the device touched Lee Minho's arm. But the human did not make any sound at all. He did not try to pull away or beg them to stop. He just sat there and took the pain like it was nothing. The only sign he felt anything was a small tightening around his eyes. "This is impossible," said Zelmuth, pulling his tentacle away. "All species feel pain. This creature should be screaming and telling us everything we want to know by now." Captain Hernax floated into the room on his anti-gravity device. He looked like a giant jellyfish made of blue, transparent material. His body pulsed with different colors depending on his emotions. Right now he was pulsing with worried yellow and orange lights. "Commander, the prisoner is not responding to any of our methods," said Captain Hernax in his bubbling voice. "We have tried pain-fear drugs and even telepathic attacks. Nothing works. His mind is completely closed to us." Commander Vextara slammed his fist against the wall, leaving deep claw marks in the metal. "How is this possible?" he roared. "This species should be primitive and weak. Their ships are small, and they have no known allies. How can one creature resist everything we do to him?" The truth was that Lee Minho was much more than he appeared to be. He was a former Special Forces soldier from the Earth military. He had been trained to resist torture and interrogation by experts who understood how the human mind worked under extreme stress. He knew that the key to survival was not avoiding pain, but accepting it and using it to stay focused more. Importantly, Lee Minho was not really a prisoner at all. He had volunteered for this mission knowing he would be captured. His job was to gather intelligence about Coalition interrogation methods and ship designs, while his AI companion sent data back to Earth through microscopic transmitters hidden in his teeth. Every second that passed without him talking was another small victory for humanity. The Coalition thought they had captured a random pilot, but they had actually caught one of Earth's most experienced intelligence operatives. He was buying time for his rescue team to arrive and learning everything he could about alien technology. The interrogation room fell silent again as the aliens stared at their impossible prisoner. They had used every method they knew, but the human remained unbroken. His calm blue eyes continued to stare ahead, showing no fear, no anger, and no pain. Commander Vextara began to wonder if this species was more dangerous than anyone had imagined and known to all of them. A message had already been sent across the galaxy. A rescue ship was coming, and it carried someone who would turn this entire situation upside down. The aliens thought they were in control, but they were about to discover that when it came to psychological warfare, humans were the masters of the game. The Coalition prison ship suddenly shook like it was hit by lightning. Every light on the ship flickered and alarm sounds filled the metal hallways. Security Chief Gulter ran toward the docking bay as fast as his 6 legs could carry him. His insect-like body clicked and buzzed with panic as he tried to understand what was happening. Something big had attached itself to their ship, but it had appeared from nowhere. Their best sensors had not detected anything approaching the ship that now connected to the Void Reaper. Was completely black and seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. It was smaller than the Coalition vessel, but something about it felt dangerous. Chief Gulter reached the docking bay and saw his guards standing in a wide circle around the airlock door. They held their weapons ready, but their faces showed confusion and fear. The guards belonged to different alien species, but they all had the same worried expression. None of them could explain why they suddenly felt like prey animals. The airlock door opened with a soft hissing sound, and white mist poured out, creating an eerie fog on the metal floor. A single figure stepped through the mist, and every guard in the room took a step backward. The figure was human, like their prisoner, but this one was completely different. Dr. Kim Hae-yeon walked into the docking bay wearing a simple black uniform with no visible weapons. She was smaller than most aliens in the room, standing only 5.5 feet tall. Her long black hair was tied back, and her dark eyes moved across the room like she was counting how many enemies she could defeat. The strange thing was that everyone believed she could defeat them all. She moved with the smooth confidence of a predator that had never known fear. Her footsteps made no sound on the metal floor, but somehow they seemed louder than thunder. Every alien in the room felt their survival instincts screaming warnings about this small human female, but none of them could understand why. "I'm here for the prisoner exchange," announced Kim Hae-yeon in perfect galactic standard. Her voice was quiet and calm, but it carried through the entire bay like she was speaking directly into each alien's mind. The way she spoke made it clear that she expected to be obeyed without question. Commander Vextara was called to the docking bay immediately. His scales shifted from angry red to cautious yellow as he approached. This new human, she was even smaller than their prisoner, and appeared to be unarmed, but something about her made his ancient reptilian brain whisper danger warnings. What? Prisoner exchange, demanded Commander Vextara, trying to sound authoritative. We made no agreements with your primitive species. Your pilot attacked our ships, and we captured him according to Galactic Kim Heian smiled, and that expression made several guards reach for their weapons. The smile did not reach her eyes, and it reminded everyone of the way predators looked at their prey. Just before attacking, you will make an agreement, she replied calmly, my colleague. Lee Minho, for information you desperately need about human military capabilities. The alien commander laughed, a sound like grinding metal and breaking glass. You think one unarmed female can threaten an entire coalition warship, he said, but his voice shook slightly. You humans truly are as insane as our report suggested. But even as he spoke, Commander Vextara felt doubt creeping into his mind. This human radiated the same unsettling fearlessness as their prisoner, but multiplied many times over. She stood in a room full of armed enemies and acted like she owned the place. Around the docking bay, alien soldiers gripped their weapons tighter, though none could explain why they suddenly felt afraid. Kim Heian studied each alien in the room like she was memorizing their faces. She seemed to know exactly what each species was capable of and how to defeat them. Her dark eyes lingered on weapons, positions, exit routes, and structural weak points in the bay. It was clear she had already planned 17 different ways to escape or win a fight. The human female took a small device from her pocket and activated it. Suddenly, every screen in the docking bay showed detailed images of coalition military bases, fleet positions, and classified weapon designs. The aliens stared in shock as their most secret information was displayed. Like a public broadcast. This is impossible, whispered Captain Hernax's jellyfish body pulsing with frightened colors. Those files are protected by quantum encryption. How could a primitive species access our military databases? Kim Heian deactivated the device and the screens went blank. Primitive, she repeated softly. That word suggests you know very little about humanity, Commander. I suggest we move this discussion to a more private location. Your crew is learning things they do not have clearance to know. Commander Vextara realized he was no longer in control of the situation. This small human female had somehow taken charge of his own ship without firing a single shot. She had information that should be impossible to obtain, and she carried herself like someone who had never lost a battle in her entire life. Follow me, he said finally, his scales now showing defeated gray colors. We will discuss your proposal in the command conference room, but know that you are still our prisoner here, and we can destroy your ship with a single command. Kim Heian followed the commander, but her smile suggested she knew something he did not. As they walked through the corridors, alien crew members stopped what they were doing to stare at the human female. None of them could shake the feeling that their ship was no longer under their own control. In the medical bay, Lee Minho sat up straighter as he felt the ship shake. He smiled for the first time since his capture, knowing that his backup had arrived. The real mission was about to begin, and these aliens had no idea what they had gotten themselves into. Within 1 hour, everything on the coalition ship had changed completely. Dr. Kim Heian now sat across from Commander Vextara in the same interrogation room where Lee Minho had been tortured, but somehow the alien commander found himself answering her questions instead of asking them. Her methods did not involve pain or threats, just an unsettling ability to read his thoughts like words on a page. Tell me about your homeworld, Vextara, she said softly, leaning back in her chair like she was having a friendly conversation. You have 3 offspring there, do you not? Vexmo, Vexron, and little Vexia, who just started her military training. Commander Vextara's scales went white with shock. Those names were classified information known only to coalition intelligence. How could this human know about his family? His children were protected by the highest security measures in the galaxy, yet this small female spoke of them like old friends. Meanwhile, Lee Minho had been moved to the medical bay under heavy guard. The alien doctors were fascinated by human biology. They discovered that his wounds healed faster than expected and his brain showed unusual activity patterns during torture, but they were more disturbed by his calm behavior. Most species broke down mentally after capture, but humans seemed to become stronger under pressure. Your Interrogation techniques are very interesting, continued Kim. Heian, studying the alien torture devices around the room. Very primitive, though. Based on creating fear and causing pain, we humans tried similar methods thousands of years ago on our own world and learned they do not work. Subjects will say anything to stop the suffering, whether it is true or false, but you want real information. Do you not? Commander Vextara found himself nodding before he could stop himself. This human seemed to understand coalition military thinking better than most coalition officers. She spoke about their strategies, their weaknesses, their political problems. With casual knowledge that suggested years of study, how long had humanity been watching them? How much did they really know? Kim Heian opened a small notebook and began writing in it with a strange pen. Your species evolved as pack hunters on a high-gravity world, she observed, making notes. Excellent physical strength, natural hierarchy, following instincts, but limited creative thinking. You follow orders very well, but struggle when facing unexpected problems. That is exactly why your interrogation of my colleague failed so badly. Alien commander's scales shifted through confused colors. Everything she said was completely accurate, but how could she know so much about Korvaxian biology and psychology? Humans were supposed to be a newly discovered species, primitive and weak, yet this female was dissecting his entire civilization like a scientist studying insects under a microscope. We humans are quite different, Kim Heian continued. We evolved as persistence hunters on a moderate gravity world. With extreme weather changes, we are not the strongest species or the fastest, but we are very adaptable and extremely stubborn. We do not break under pressure, Commander. We get angry instead. And angry humans are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Around the ship, other coalition personnel were discovering this truth for themselves. Lee Minho had somehow convinced 3 guards to become his friends, not through force or threats, but by talking to them about their families, their dreams, their fears about the coming war. He never tried to escape his medical bed, but now had willing allies among his captors who brought him better food and medical supplies. The human pilot had learned that Guard Captain Yelner missed his home planet. And worried about his aging parents, he discovered that Medic Zinther dreamed of becoming a doctor instead of a military officer. And he found out that Security Officer Belnax was afraid the war would never end and he would never see his children grow up. By talking to them like friends instead of enemies, Lee Minho had accomplished something impossible. He had turned his guards into his protectors. They still followed orders, but now they hoped the human would survive. They began to see him as a person instead of just a prisoner. This was exactly what human psychology training had taught him to do back in the interrogation room. Kim Heian continued her gentle questioning of Commander Vextara. She never raised her voice or made threats. She simply asked questions, and somehow the alien found himself wanting to answer them. Her knowledge of coalition politics and military structure was so complete that he began to think she might be able to help solve some of their problems. Your fleet commanders are worried about the reports from the Galactic Core, are they not? She asked. Casually, strange ships that destroy everything in their path and leave no survivors. Your military analysts estimate you have perhaps 5 years before they reach coalition space. Commander Vextara stared at her in complete shock. That information was so classified that only 12 beings in the entire coalition knew about it. How could this human female know about the greatest threat their civilization had ever faced, the threat that kept him awake at night worrying about the future of his species? Kim Heian smiled gently and closed her notebook. I think it is time we had a more serious conversation about why I'm really here, Commander. This is not just a prisoner exchange. This is an opportunity for both our species to survive what is coming. The interrogation continued for several more hours, but now Commander Vextara realized he was completely outmatched. Dr. Kim Heian did not need torture devices or threats. She used something far more effective: complete and total knowledge. She seemed to know everything about coalition politics, military weaknesses, and the personal lives of their leaders. Your species has many admirable qualities, she observed, making more notes in her strange book: loyalty, courage, physical strength, and a strong sense of duty. But you have one critical weakness that will destroy you. If the core species reach coalition space, you cannot adapt quickly to new situations. Commander Vextara wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Korvaxian military doctrine had not changed in 300 years. They used the same tactics, the same formations, the same strategies that had worked against traditional enemies. But the core species were different. They used weapons and tactics that no one had ever seen. Before Kim Hye-yeon activated her device again, and holographic displays filled the room showing detailed battle reports from the galactic core. The images were horrifying: entire star systems consumed by strange black ships that seemed to eat planets. And STAR's coalition scouts had reported these events, but the full data had been classified. Your advanced scouts have been watching this destruction for 2 years, she continued. These core species do not negotiate or communicate, they simply consume everything in their path. Your current military preparations will not stop them. You need something different. The alien commander stared at the horrible images of destroyed worlds. Some of those planets had held billions of lives, now they were nothing but empty space and cosmic dust. The core species moved through the galaxy like a plague, destroying everything they encountered. We have been studying this threat much longer than you have, Kim Hye-yeon said softly. Human long-range exploration ships have been observing the core species for 15 years. We know their capabilities, their weaknesses, and most importantly, how to fight them. But we cannot stop them alone, and neither can you. Commander Vextara felt hope and despair fighting in his mind. Hope because this human suggested there was a way to win; despair because it meant depending on help from a species the coalition had planned to conquer. The political implications were staggering. Around the ship, Lee Min-ho was conducting his own form of psychological warfare. He had convinced the medical staff to let him help with other patients. His human medical knowledge was surprisingly advanced, and he was able to save the life of a critically injured Zephyrian engineer. The grateful engineer told everyone how the human prisoner had worked for 6 hours straight to repair his damaged organs using techniques the alien doctors had never seen. Lee Min-ho had turned himself from a dangerous enemy into a valuable medical consultant. Word spread through the ship that the human was not just tough but also intelligent and helpful. In the ship's mess hall, crew members began discussing the humans openly. Some wondered if they had been wrong about this species. Others suggested that maybe the humans could be useful allies instead of conquered slaves. The mood on the ship was changing in ways that made the officers nervous. Back in the interrogation room, Kim Hye-yeon revealed more disturbing truths we know about the political crisis in the Coalition Council, she said casually. 3 species are considering leaving the alliance because they believe you cannot protect them from the core threat. The Vorthan Republic has already begun secret negotiations with the Stellar Federation. Commander Vextara's scales went through rapid color changes, showing his emotional turmoil. That information was so sensitive that revealing it could start a civil war within the coalition. How did this human know about secret political negotiations that had happened just days ago? The truth, Commander, is that Earth has been watching your coalition for much longer than you realize. Kim Hye-yeon continued, we have had observers in your society for decades. We know your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, and your hopes. We understand how your government works, how your military thinks, and how your people live their daily lives. She stood up and walked to the viewing port that showed the stars outside. The galaxy is about to face its greatest threat in millions of years, she said quietly. Species that refuse to work together will not survive. The core entities do not care about your politics, your territories, or your individual cultures. They only care about consumption. Commander Vextara found himself standing beside her, looking out at the same stars. The human female was smaller than him and appeared fragile, but her presence filled the room like she was a giant. What do you propose? He asked, knowing that his question would change everything. Kim Hye-yeon turned to face him with those dark eyes that seemed to see through his soul. An alliance, Commander. Your military strength combined with human tactical knowledge, your industrial capacity combined with our technological innovations, your experience in galactic politics combined with our understanding of asymmetric warfare. The alien commander realized that this conversation had become the most important negotiation in coalition history. The survival of dozens of species might depend on what happened in this room. The small human female had somehow turned a simple prisoner exchange into a discussion about the future of the entire galaxy. And the price, he asked, knowing there was always a price. Kim Hye-yeon smiled. Again, but this time it was warm instead of predatory mutual respect. Commander, we do not want to conquer you or rule you. We want to survive alongside you as equals. The coming war will require all of our combined strengths and the best ideas from every species. Commander Vextara stared at her for a long moment, then slowly extended his clawed hand in the human gesture of agreement he had learned from studying their prisoner. Kim Hye-yeon shook his hand with her small soft fingers, and somehow he knew that this moment would be remembered in history books for thousands of years. By the 6th hour of their conversation, Commander Vextara was no longer pretending to be in control of the situation. He sat across from Kim Hye-yeon like a student learning from a master teacher, desperate to understand how she had turned his entire worldview upside down. The human had revealed truths that shook the foundation of everything he believed about galactic politics. Earth has been watching your coalition for 53 years, Kim Hye-yeon explained patiently, opening a thick folder filled with documents. We have studied every species, every culture, every military doctrine, and every political system. We know your individual and collective strengths and weaknesses better than you know them yourselves. The question is not whether we can defeat you in war. We already know we can. The question is whether we want to. Commander Vextara's world crashed down around him like a collapsed building. 53 years, but first contact with humans was only 3 months ago when our patrol ships found your forward base. Kim Hye-yeon smiled, that dangerous expression again. First official contact, Commander. We have been present in coalition space much longer than that, learning, preparing, and positioning ourselves. Your patrol ships found exactly what we wanted them to find. She activated her advanced device, and holographic displays filled the entire room, showing incredibly detailed intelligence reports. The displays showed scans of coalition military bases, complete fleet positions, detailed profiles of political leaders, economic data, and even personal information about individual officers. The depth of human knowledge was absolutely staggering. The humans had mapped every aspect of coalition civilization without anyone noticing. They knew which species were loyal and which were planning rebellion. They understood the economic problems that kept coalition leaders awake at night. They had detailed files on military officers, including their personal weaknesses and political ambitions. Lee Min-ho volunteered to be captured. Kim Hye-yeon continued calmly. We needed to test your interrogation methods and gather detailed intelligence about this ship class and your security procedures. He has been feeding us continuous information through microscopic quantum transmitters built into his dental work. We now know everything about your ship, designs, your crew training, and your tactical doctrines. Commander Vextara slumped in his chair, feeling completely defeated. The human prisoner had not been suffering through torture. He had been working the entire time. Every moment of apparent pain had been an act designed to make his captors underestimate him. While they thought they were breaking him, he was actually studying them and reporting everything to his commanders. But why? Kim Hye-yeon continued, her voice becoming more serious. We did not reveal ourselves just to prove our superiority. Your coalition faces threats that you do not even know exist, yet species from the galactic core region are moving outward in a coordinated expansion. They consume entire star systems and leave nothing behind but empty space. She showed him new holographic images that made his blood run cold. Massive black ships surrounded planets, and within hours the worlds were gone, completely consumed, along with their populations, their cities, and even their atmospheres. The core species moved through space like cosmic locusts, destroying everything they encountered. Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking this expansion for 27 years, Kim Hye-yeon said quietly. They will reach the outer coalition territories in approximately 4 years and 3 months. Your current military forces cannot stop them. Your standard tactics will not work against them. Your political structure will collapse under the pressure of coordinated attacks across dozens of systems. Simultaneously, the alien commander stared at the horrifying images, feeling sick to his stomach. How do you know all this? He whispered. Why should we believe you? Kim Hye-yeon gestured to all the intelligence displays around them. Because we have already proven that our information is completely accurate, Commander. Everything we have told you about coalition politics, military capabilities, and personal details has been correct. We gain nothing by lying about this threat. She walked to the viewing port and pointed toward a specific section of stars. Our long-range scouts have been observing the core species. For over 2 decades, we know their ship, designs, their weapon capabilities, their expansion patterns, and most importantly, their weaknesses. They can be defeated, but only through coordinated action, using tactics they have never encountered before, Commander. Vextara joined her at the viewing port, staring out at stars that might soon be consumed by the approaching threat. What kind of tactics, he asked. Kim Hye-yeon turned to face him with an expression of grim determination. Asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, adaptive strategies, and the kind of stubborn persistence that humans are famous for. Your species fights with honor and follow established rules. The core species have no honor and follow no rules. To defeat them, you must learn to think like humans. The implications of her words slowly sank into his mind. The coalition would have to change everything about how they approached warfare. They would need to abandon centuries of military tradition and learn completely new ways of fighting. It would require a level of adaptation that most coalition species found very difficult around. The ship news of the conversation was spreading through unofficial channels. Officers and crew members were discussing the possibility that they're human. Prisoners were actually potential allies. Instead of enemies, the mood was shifting from hostility to cautious curiosity as more personnel heard about Lee Min-ho's helpful behavior in the medical bay and the ship's communication center. Encrypted messages were being sent to Coalition High Command, reporting that the situation had become far more complex than anyone had anticipated. The simple prisoner interrogation had turned into first contact negotiations with potentially galaxy-changing implications. Kim Hye-yeon opened another folder and showed Commander Vextara detailed tactical analyses. These are human battle plans for fighting the core species, she explained. We have been developing these strategies for 15 years based on careful observation of their capabilities. Our computer simulations suggest a 73% probability of success if coalition and human forces work together. Commander Vextara studied the tactical plans with growing amazement. The human strategies were unlike anything he had ever seen. They involved deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare, combined with coordinated strikes. Using unconventional weapons, the plans were brilliant, but they would require unprecedented cooperation between species that had been enemies just hours before. The survival of our civilizations depends on working together, Kim Hye-yeon concluded. We are offering you our knowledge, our tactical expertise, and our technological innovations. In exchange, we ask for your industrial capacity, your military personnel, and your established political structures. Neither of our species can survive this threat alone, but together we have a real chance. Commander Vextara looked at the small human female with new respect and understanding. She had come to his ship not as a conqueror, but as a potential savior, offering alliance against a threat that would destroy them all. The interrogation had become a recruitment mission, and somehow she had recruited him to her cause. I will need to contact Coalition High Command, he said finally. This decision is beyond my authority. Kim Hye-yeon nodded and handed him a secure communication device. Take all the time you need, Commander, but remember that the core species do not negotiate or delay. They continue their expansion regardless of our political discussions. Every day we waste in debate is another day closer to their arrival. 24 hours later, the massive coalition fleet that had been approaching to destroy the human rescue ship found themselves in the middle of the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Admiral Park Sung-ho had arrived with a full diplomatic team and a fleet of sleek black ships, but no weapons were charged or shields raised. The message was clear: humans came seeking peace, but they were prepared for any possible outcome. Commander Vextara found himself serving as translator and cultural advisor as representatives from dozens of coalition species tried to understand these remarkable humans. They had expected to find primitive aliens who were easy to defeat or enslave. Instead, they discovered a species that had been studying them for decades and could have destroyed them at any time if they had chosen warfare over diplomacy. Your species fights with great honor, Commander Vextara told Lee Min-ho as the former prisoner was officially released with full diplomatic immunity. The human pilot smiled and shook the alien commander's clawed hand with genuine friendship. We fight to win, he replied simply. But we much prefer to win without fighting at all. It saves everyone a lot of trouble and creates better relationships. Afterward, around them, coalition officers were already attending lectures and training sessions where humans shared their tactical knowledge, psychological warfare techniques, and adaptive strategy concepts. The learning process was intense, but the coalition military personnel were amazed by the effectiveness of human methods. Dr. Kim Haeon presented the final alliance terms to the assembled alien leaders in the ship's main conference hall. Humans would share their advanced stealth technology, tactical knowledge, strategic planning capabilities, and detailed intelligence about the core species threat. In return, the coalition would provide raw materials, manufacturing capacity, safe passage through their territories, and full political recognition of human settlements. Most importantly, both civilizations would stand together as equals against the approaching threat from the galactic core. The alliance would be based on mutual respect, shared resources, and coordinated military action rather than conquest or domination. This was a completely new type of relationship in galactic politics. We have studied all of your species' histories. Kim Haeon concluded her presentation. Every civilization in your coalition was originally brought in through force, intimidation, or economic pressure, but humans cannot be conquered. We can only be befriended or completely destroyed. And destroying us would cost you everything you have built in this region of the galaxy. Choose your path wisely. The vote was unanimous. Every coalition species agreed to the alliance. The alternative was too horrible to consider. When faced with extinction, cooperation became the only logical choice. The signing ceremony took place on the human flagship with representatives from 47 different species putting their names on the historic agreement. 6 months later, the first joint human coalition fleet engaged advanced scouts of the core species in the Kepler Nebula region. Using human psychological tactics, adaptive strategies, and coalition firepower, they achieved what military analysts had called impossible: a complete victory with 0 casualties. The core species scouts had expected to face traditional coalition forces using predictable tactics and standard weapons. Instead, they encountered human stealth ships that appeared from nowhere, coalition vessels that fought in completely new formations, and psychological warfare that confused and demoralized their usually efficient operations. After the battle, Commander Vextara and Kim Haeon stood together on the bridge of the Joint Command ship, watching the wreckage of core species vessels drift through space. The interrogation that started as an attempt to break a human prisoner had ended with humanity becoming the coalition's most valued military partners and strategic advisors. Lee Min-ho and Kim Haeon both received coalition medals of honor for their roles in creating the alliance, though they privately joked that the real victory was proving humans could make friends even with species that had initially tried to torture them. After all, that was what humans did best, turning enemies into allies through determination, understanding, and an impressive ability to figure out exactly what made other species think and feel the way they did. The galaxy was still dangerous, and the core species remained a serious threat. But now dozens of civilizations stood united with human tactical knowledge and coalition industrial might working together. For the first time in years, there was real hope that their combined worlds and cultures would survive the coming storm. Commander Vextara looked at his human allies with deep respect. These small, stubborn creatures had taught his people that sometimes the greatest victory came not from defeating your enemies, but from turning them into friends who would fight beside you when the real danger arrived. Inside the ship, Commander Vextara walked down a long hallway. His footsteps made loud clicking sounds on the metal floor. He was not happy at all. His reptilian face showed anger, and his green scales were turning red, which meant he was very upset. His yellow eyes glowed with frustration as he moved toward the interrogation room. Commander Vextara was 7 feet tall and looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. His thick arms ended in sharp claws that could cut through steel. His tail dragged behind him, making scraping sounds on the floor. He wore a black uniform with silver badges that showed his high rank in the coalition military. For 3 whole days and nights, the commander had been trying to get information from a strange prisoner. The prisoner was from a species nobody had ever seen before. They called themselves humans and came from a planet named Earth. The coalition had captured this human when his small ship attacked one of their cargo vessels. The human ship had been impossible to understand. It moved in ways that broke all the rules of space. Combat, it appeared from nowhere, destroyed 2 coalition warships, and disappeared again before anyone could react. When they finally caught the human pilot, everyone expected him to be easy to break. All prisoners talked eventually when faced with coalition torture methods, but this human was different, very different. Commander Vextara reached the interrogation room and pressed his clawed hand against the door scanner. The heavy metal door slid open with a hissing sound. Inside, the room was dark except for a bright light shining down on a chair in the center. The chair was made of pure energy that held the prisoner in place like invisible chains. The human sat in the energy chair and looked straight ahead. His name was Lee Minho, and he was unlike any creature the aliens had ever captured. He was only 6 feet tall, which was small compared to most coalition species. His skin was pale pink, and he had dark hair that only grew on the top of his head. The strangest thing about him were his blue eyes that seemed to look right through anyone who stared at them. Lee Minho wore a torn flight suit that was once blue, but now had brown stains from dried blood. His face had cuts and bruises from 3 days of interrogation, but he showed no signs of breaking. His hands were tied behind his back with energy bonds that would shock him if he tried to move. The bonds had shocked him many times, but he never cried out in pain. Standing next to the prisoner was Interrogator Zelmuth, the most feared torturer in the coalition fleet. Zelmuth looked like a giant octopus with gray skin and 8 long tentacles. Each tentacle had small devices at the end that could deliver electric shocks or inject painful chemicals into a prisoner's body. His large black eyes never blinked as he stared at his victims. Zelmuth had broken thousands of prisoners from dozens of different species. He knew exactly how much pain each type of alien could handle before they would tell him everything he wanted to know, but this human was a complete mystery. The creature seemed to feel pain normally, but somehow ignored it completely. Commander Vextara walked into the room, and his scales turned even redder with anger. He had been in charge of interrogations for 20 years and had never failed to get information from a prisoner. His reputation in the coalition military depended on his success, but this one small human was making him look foolish. The commander stopped in front of Lee Minho and stared down at him with his glowing yellow eyes. The human looked back without any fear in his blue eyes. This made the commander even more angry. Most prisoners would be crying and begging for mercy by now, but this human acted like he was sitting in a comfortable chair at home. Speak, demanded Commander Vextara in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. Tell us your military codes. Tell us how your ships move so fast. Tell us where your home planet keeps its weapons. Lee Minho said nothing. He continued to stare straight ahead as if the commander was not even there. His breathing was calm and steady, even though the energy chair was designed to cause constant discomfort. The silence in the room was so complete that everyone could hear the humming sound of the ship engines far below. Interrogator Zelmuth moved closer to the prisoner and raised one of his tentacles. The device at the end began to glow with white-hot energy. This device had made the strongest warriors scream in agony, but the human did not even look at it. Zelmuth pressed the device against the human's arm and activated it. The smell of burning skin filled the air, and smoke rose from where the device touched Lee Minho's arm, but the human did not make any sound at all. He did not try to pull away or beg them to stop. He just sat there and took the pain like it was